about the need for energy transition. First, let me introduce our special guest, my friend Tom Kirkman. Tom Kirkman, let me put his profile here in the screen, is a famous international project manager and consultant in oil and gas, energy, engineering, and he's in Malaysia today. So it's 7 p.m. in Brazil, 7 a.m., I suppose, in Malaysia. Good afternoon and good morning, Tom.
Good morning. Yeah, it's actually 6 a.m. here, so I think there's a 13-hour time zone difference. Yeah, I'm vacationing here in Malaysia for a while rather than the U.S., and it's nice to be on your show again. I think this is our fourth
For,
podcast together.
four or four, fifth, I
Fourth,
don't
fourth.
remember.
I lose track.
Yeah, yeah. Very good. Tom, before we go to the first point, I would like to share with our audience two things. First, Exxon said a few days ago that oil will remain at its current consumption level for the next 25 years, or about 100 million barrels a day. That's a big level, totally different from what other people are saying. And the second slide is about OPEC. 1 year ago, OPEC said that consumption will still rise to 116 million barrels per day by 2045. So, my question for you, the first one, please, Tom. Do you believe in the energy transition as many people are propagating or not?
Nope. There is no energy transition as defined by, various parties. There's only an energy addition. You are adding energy to the mix. Globally, the demand for energy keeps increasing year on year on year on year. The only exception in recent living memory was during the insane COVID lockdowns, where the entire world basically got shut down, which I don't want to get into. That was just total insanity. I don't want to do that again. But apart from that unusual glitch, year on year on year on year, the amount of energy required by the world continues to increase. So you cannot replace hydrocarbons. And by hydrocarbons, I mean oil and gas and coal, and also LNG, which is also natural gas, plus nuclear. You cannot replace those reliable sources of energy with intermittent and unreliable sources of energy, such as wind and solar. You cannot. If you keep adding unreliable and intermittent wind and solar to the energy grid, what you will get is an increasingly unreliable and intermittent electrical grid, because you are taking reliability out of the picture. And you can't replace unreliable intermittent energy with reliable energy. Either way, the demand for oil and gas and coal and LNG and nuclear will continue to grow globally for decades. There is simply no way around this. And people who want to have a nice unicorn green pretend fantasy of the world is going to run on wind and solar in the next 10 years, I'm sorry, they're just delusional. And there's no point in me when I discuss on LinkedIn, because I'm prolific on LinkedIn. When people go down this path, I don't even argue with them. It's like talking to a brick wall. It's just a waste of my time. It's a waste of their time. I can use, I've given up trying to use facts and logic and reason. I poke fun of science all the time because science, climate science, has been hijacked into this insane, absurd, surreal fantasy that is totally unhinged from actual reality. The world needs more energy, not less, unless there is going to be a significant depopulation event coming soon, such as a literal World War III with nuclear war, where tens of millions or billions of people will die. Unless something like that happens, or these threatened pandemics. I mean, they're pushing three scare tactics right now. There's monkeypox, there's COVID, there's equine something or other, there's bird flu. I forget.
Threat.
All of these are just springing up. It's like, yeah, no, I'm sorry. None of these are actual pandemics. They're not. There's a few people getting sick, and it's just scare tactics. It's like this is
Mhm.
not going to kill a quarter of the world's population. That's what I consider a pandemic. So, barring an actual pandemic or barring an actual World War III, the world will continue to require additional amounts of reliable energy that includes coal in the developing world. And my only caveat for coal would be to use add scrubbers. I mean, India and China are adding huge amounts of coal because one, it's reliable, it's easy to store, and it's cheap. The only thing that I would push for is just add scrubbers to these coal burning power generation plants and you clean up a lot of the excess pollution. Problem solved.
Yeah. When you mentioned, Tom, that it's not energy transition, but energy addition,
Mhm.
do you see which part of energy in the world in the next 10, 20, 30 years will be as renewable energy? What amount?
See,
What
the
do you
thing is,
perceive?
one, I consider coal is renewable, although it's longer term. Methane is definitely renewable, and people get all upset when I say that natural gas is renewable, methane is renewable. Oh, but it's not. Oh, well, yes, it is. It's like you're turning landfills, and they call it, they turn this green into renewable natural gas. Well, I'm sorry, that's redundant. Natural gas is renewable. Natural gas, in my view, is green. It's basically clean burning for all intents and purposes. And it's the US government. I actually have a copy of a letter from Biden from a few years ago, claiming that methane is one of the worst pollutants in the world. And I'm sorry, methane is not a pollutant, just like carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. Methane is a natural gas, it's necessary for life on Earth. Carbon dioxide is a natural gas, it's necessary for life on Earth. Oxygen is a natural gas, it's necessary for life on Earth. Trying to target carbon dioxide, which plants need, is insane. We're actually at historically globally low CO2 levels, carbon dioxide levels, when you look at the entire history of the Earth. And the quote unquote climate scientists, which I immensely poke fun at, uh, are all bent out of shape. And it's like, I'm sorry, or carbon dioxide does not cause climate change. Carbon dioxide levels increase when temperatures of the earth increases, not the other way around. Carbon dioxide is not the leading indicator, it's a lagging indicator. And historically, I mean, you look at down in history just a few hundred years ago, there used to be wine in the UK because the weather was much warmer than it is now. The earth is coming out of a mini global ice age, mini. And so the earth actually needs to be warmed up. And I see all this hysteria about global warming, which they now call climate change, but it's insane because literally 10 times more people die around the world from extreme cold than from extreme heat. But the only thing that gets attention is heat. And I was poking fun yesterday, there's some climate activists saying that air conditioning is now a human right. No, I'm sorry. I grew up on a farm. There's still no air conditioning on the farm. I'm in Malaysia right now, smack on the equator. I don't have air conditioning, and I got the windows open. It is not a human right. Air conditioning makes global warming worse just because you're adding heat to the surrounding areas. The running joke is in Saudi
That's right.
Arabia, the way is you add 1 million air conditioners and, you'll add 10 degrees Celsius to the local temperatures. It Air conditioning does not solve the problem. It makes global warming actually worse.
That's right.
So cleaning up pollution is a better solution. I've been following Captain Kieran Kelly. He's got a nice program that cleans up plastic waste out of the oceans, and I'm just giving him a little bit of a plug here. That's a viable solution. Cleaning up pollution gets results. Trying to fight carbon dioxide is insanity. We need more carbon dioxide, not less. Carbon dioxide is plant food, and people get so bent out of shape when I say this. It's like, okay, let me put this way. Would you be upset if I said we need more clean oxygen for people and animals to breathe? No? Then why are you getting upset when we need more carbon dioxide so plants can breathe? There was an article that literally, I wrote about this on LinkedIn a couple of days ago, and literally their logic was, I'm trying to place this in my head off the top of my head. They said because carbon dioxide causes more plants to grow, and more plants growing means eventually more plants die, and more plants dying causes more carbon dioxide and more methane, then more plants growing causes pollution. I mean, this is literally the insane, twisted logic that they're using, that more plants are bad. And it's like, I'm sorry, one way to handle the exceeding heat increases in large cities, plant more trees. Keep the sun from heating up the sidewalks in the
Yeah.
black tardy roads. Grow some trees. You'll drop the temperature 5 degrees Celsius during the summer. Grow some trees. That's a viable solution.
Yeah, Ton, let me add something for you for your comments. The laws of physics and engineering, they restrict this vision of renewables. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, see, renewables is marketing. Well, let me back up. Let me back up over 100 years ago to get to the root of what is going on here in the whole energy transition. So back in the days when people were burning wood, and then it got transitioned over to whale oil, and then the whale oil almost went extinct because people were burning whale oil, which is very, very polluting. And then oil was discovered. Cool. And then Rockefeller, being the not nice person that he was, but a genius in marketing, he coined the phrase, the marketing phrase, fossil fuels, which is not true. This is not, oil is not a finite resource in my viewpoint, and people will dispute this, but there's no shortage, there's no danger of the world running out of oil. There's not. It, but he used the marketing term fossil fuels to try and position oil as a finite resource which will rapidly run out and thus increase the price of the oil that he was selling. And it worked fabulously. Price of oil keeps rising, but there's no danger of the world running out of oil or natural gas. Natural gas is constantly being replenished, and people do it. I poke fun, talk about cows, they're methane. You eat cabbage and beans, and people, farting. That's methane. There's no shortage of methane coming out. There's no shortage of coal. There's massive amounts of coal in the world, and the U.S. has some of the largest reserves of coal in the
Yeah.
world. Just off the top of my head, there's no shortage of these coming out, and I view these as renewable. Granted, it's going to take a while to come up with new coal, but it's not going to take hundreds of millions of years like these climate scientists are saying. It's not. We're not going to run out of oil. We're not going to run out of natural gas slash LNG, which is simply compressed liquefied natural gas. We're not going to run out of coal. And on the flip side, what is called renewable energy is not renewable. Wind and solar are
Yeah.
not green, and they are not renewable because the infrastructure, solar power panels need to replace about every 10, maybe 15 years. They claim there's a 30-year lifespan, but actually no. Most places they need to be replaced about every 10, maximum 15 years. Same with wind, whether it's onshore or offshore, the
Yeah.
entire infrastructure needs to be replaced. Please explain to me how that is renewable. You've got to take tens of millions or
Very
billions
good concept.
toxic solar power panels, throw them in a landfill, manufacture new solar power panels. How is that renewable? How is that green? It is not. Wind turbines are coated with what they call forever chemicals that they don't, they're very, very toxic. And what happens is generally they are not recycled. Generally they're put in landfills. Yes, they can be recycled, but it costs more than 10 times the amount to recycle solar power panels and the wind turbines than it does to simply put them in landfills, which is what's happening right now. So
Yeah.
you're taking these toxic materials and putting them in landfills. That is not green. That is not renewable. This is
And,
marketing.
and must be include the mining, the minerals that be used
Yes.
to this manufacturing process.
And we can't mine enough minerals to make this mythical energy transition. So the question I frequently ask is, so who's getting rich? The companies that get all these subsidies and tax breaks are getting rich. Look, I was a project manager for installing a solar power farm. This is where I learned the nuts and bolts of what this is about. It is all about tax breaks. It is not about being renewable. It's not about being green. The company did not give a toss about it. They only cared about getting the project done on time to get the tax breaks by the end of the year. Every year that they pushed it back, they would lose 2% of the tax rebates from the federal government. And that's only the tax rebates. That's not all the other subsidies that go
Yeah.
along with it. So let's say you've got $100 million project, or let's say you've got $1 billion project.
Mhm.
2% tax break on a $1 billion project, that's a chunk of money. And that
Yeah.
reduces every year. And that's only the tax breaks, that's not the subsidies and all the other things that are going in. So these companies are climbing on. What's happening, you'll see a lot of, what you're seeing right now, these offshore wind farms on the US are being canceled.
Yeah.
Major
Really?
projects, because they're not viable anymore because interest rates are increasing, and even with massive amounts of government subsidies, they're still not economically viable. So you take away these artificial subsidies and they will always be money losers.
Yeah.
Even with the subsidies, they're still losing money.
Yeah. Your speech makes me feel that. Do you believe that fossil fuels will be the energy source for the eternity, for forever?
I won't say forever. I'm holding out for improvements on nuclear energy. The dangers to nuclear, while real, are severely overblown, uh, in my opinion. And I'm not an expert on this, but I've been reading about this for a long time. For the foreseeable future, for the next 30 years, easily, I can see oil and coal and natural gas, primarily natural gas, I think moving more toward natural gas, will be the primary energy sources around the world. In the developing world, the global south, it's going to be increasingly coal, simply because coal is far cheaper and it's easy to store. The fall down from coal, especially in India and in China, is they're taking the shortcuts and they're not putting the proper scrubbers to reduce the amount of pollution because they're going the cheap route.
Yeah.
If they could fix this problem, you're going to undercut all of this insane nonsense of India and China are destroying the world. They're not. They're trying to come up to the living standards of the rest of the world,
That's
and
right.
we've got hypocritical EU, US, Canada, Australia, trying to lecture the rest of
Japan.
the world, and South America and Africa and developing nations and China and India about how to live. And it's like,
Yeah.
here we're going to get into a little bit of politics here. This whole push toward climate panic, and this is what I call it. I make memes about this
Uh,
climate panic.
that's that's a good point, Tom, because United States are investing heavily in renewables, and especially in California. But
It's destroying their economy deliberately. So I've been poking fun. I posted yesterday a couple of memes. It's like I said, climate communism, and that with the deliberate thing, because I'm going to allude to Kamala Harris interview on CNN a couple of days ago, which was just, I'm not going to go down that path, but it's like, so that made me write one of my memes about climate communism, and then I said for the greater good. So that was what my meme said: climate communism for the greater good, and it's got a picture of a green hammer and sickle on it. So this is being pushed primarily by China and the Communist Party in China, pushing the Western countries to commit energy suicide and economic suicide by buying into this whole climate change scaremongering, climate panic. The world is going to end because the climate is going to increase by 1.5 degrees Celsius. And my view is the world can use 1.5 degrees global warming because trees will prosper. We need more carbon dioxide, more plants will grow. This is a good thing, not a bad thing. And people totally freak out when I say about this. Oh, but you're not a scientist. No, but I've got a brain and I can use it. So I can think
it's
for
an
myself,
engineer.
and I don't believe the media. So
Yeah.
this whole renewables push is nonsense. Green energy is a marketing term, just like fossil fuels was a marketing term. There is no such thing as green energy. Full stop. There is no such thing as renewable energy. You talk about the laws of thermodynamics. There is no such thing as
But
anything called renewable energy.
and what do you expect for November elections? Maybe Democrats or Republicans in terms of way of investments in terms of energy? It's totally different, or they are similar in some parts? What do you see?
We're going to see a huge split in the United States, no matter who wins or who loses the upcoming presidential elections in November. It's going
Yeah.
to get very, very messy. And that's why I believe there is so much clampdown on censorship, on free speech. Anything which governments disagree with is now
Like in
called
Brazil,
free.
like in
Like
Brazil.
in Brazil. Oh, I've been following it, and Elon Musk is basically this is the top story on Zero Hedge today. Elon Musk and Twitter and the dictator in Brazil, basically they're clamping. Brazil government is clamping down illegally. They want Twitter to censor political opposition, which is against Brazil law. And I don't want to get too much into politics here, but
Yeah, yeah.
this sort of censorship is only going to get it worse, and I expect it's going to get worse on the entire topic of, climate panic, of renewable energy, all this other stuff. Anyone that flies in the face, like I do, I openly fly in the face of this nonsense of climate panic. That's what I call it, climate panic.
But do you see in
Panic
the United
harder.
States? You see in the United States can be the same?
We're going to see it. I can see the creeping censorship going in, and the way I try and bypass the blatant and open censorship against anyone who disagrees with it's now 99% of climate scientists agree that the world is going to end unless we handle climate change. It's like, yeah, nonsense. The world is not ending. So I poke fun of it. I tend to use absurd, surrealist parody because the censors don't know how to react to it. So I just poke fun of it because I can't openly attack it because I'll just get shut down. So I just poke fun of it. So that's why I make memes about this. I post silly stuff about it, and I just laugh at it because I'm sorry, the world is not ending due to global warming slash climate change slash global warming slash climate hell
Fossil
slash
fuels.
climate catastrophe, whatever you want to call it. Settle down. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. So the best thing you can do if you actually want to do something to help the world, clean up pollution in your own backyard. That will actually have a huge help. So my parents are on a farm, and what they do is they're part of an organization where every year, every spring, they go and clean up garbage which people throw in the local Shiawassee River. It's a local initiative, and people go out and spend the entire day pulling out garbage and trash and bottles and tires and bicycles and everything that people just throw in the river, and they do a huge cleaning out. And they've been doing this for 20 years now, and the river used to be horrible and polluted and ucky, yick, just terrible. And now these days it's like much cleaner. So you put in the effort to clean up the pollution by morons who literally just throw their stuff out their car window. And here you see this in Malaysia and Asia in general. People just litter like crazy. If you can get the community to get together and pick up the local garbage, which people just throw away, that will be much better than panicking and worrying about global warming slash climate change class slash the world is going to end. And it's like kids are growing up these days terrified that they're not going to grow old because the world is going to end due to climate change. I'm sorry, that's not true. It's just
Uh,
not true.
Tom, let me ask you. No, it's not this one.
Yeah.
It's the previous one. What was the reaction of people with this Exxon? Exxon is an American company, and
Yep.
saying that the level of consumption, fossil fuel consumption, will remain the same for the next 25 years. What would be the reaction of Democrats, for instance, when they read this?
Generally, the reaction that I see is one, they get very upset, and then two, they just deny, deny. No, 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 you're wrong. You're not a scientist. Blah 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 blah. And they're not taking into account reality, which is why I generally avoid head-to-head arguments with the people who firmly believe the world is going to end because of climate change and firmly believe that wind and solar will 100% replace oil and gas and nuclear because they're delusional, and there's just no arguing with them. So I poke fun at them. I laugh at them because it's like talking to a brick wall. It's like arguing with a 3-year-old who's having a temper tantrum. It's just a waste of time. You're just going to get frustrated. Let them calm down. When people are mad, they don't think straight and they lie. So when people who are fully invested in this crap about the world is going to end due to climate change, or we must replace all fossil fuels, all oil and gas and coal and LNG and nuclear with wind and solar, they're just delusional. There's just I can't argue with them. So
Yeah,
calm
perfect.
down. Stop terrorizing kids. Don't teach
Yeah.
this stuff in schools.
And Tom, with this confusion, probably prices are increasing because the confusion, and less people are accessing energy because the prices are higher. Do you believe in
One
this?
prices the cure for high prices of energy is high prices. This is what happens. This is what's been going on in oil and gas for decades. When oil prices get too high, consumption demand lowers just because people can't afford it. So during the winter time, what happens is people don't heat their homes as much because it's just too expensive. And during the summertime, they drive their cars less just because the price of gasoline is too high. When oil prices go down, then the exact opposite happens. Then the energy consumption goes up. And this back and forth roller coaster cycle has been going on for decades. I don't see that ending anytime soon. People say sometimes you'll every few years, every 5 or 10 years, you'll say, oh, oil prices are going to go to $300 a barrel. Well, it might for a very short amount of time, but it won't stay there.
Supposing the winner of the elections on November, the winner, I don't know who will win, hire you to be assistant, to be advisor for energy purpose in the country. What are the first talks that you should have with him or with her?
Funny enough, you should say that. I actually got into a significant amount of trouble because I had the U.S. Senate reach out to me about a year ago and asked my opinion on energy policies in the U.S. And I told them what I thought, and I promptly got into a boatload of trouble at work. So, one, the U.S. government is never going to hire me to be a policy advisor. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter which side wins because I don't have the connections to make this. But the thing is, the reality is that there is currently no replacing hydrocarbons plus nuclear as baseline energy. There's simply no way around this. And anyone who truly believes that building out massive amounts of new wind and solar will replace baseline energy from hydrocarbons and nuclear is utterly dreaming. They're delusional. There's been trillions of dollars spent and hardly any reduction in oil and gas and coal, and hardly any reduction in nuclear in Western nations. What's happening is governments in the EU and the UK and the US, and I believe in Canada and Australia, are forcibly, through environmental regulations, which I consider illegal energy dictates, mandates from federal governments, to prematurely shut down reliable energy from coal and natural gas and nuclear, and forcing through massive subsidies and the increase in wind and solar. All that's happening is it's totally wrecking the grid. It is making the electric grid totally unstable. See, coal is dirt cheap to store. Not true with electricity. Electricity, one, is very, very expensive to store even a short amount of electricity. And two, the electricity drains in heat and cold. Batteries drain. You,
Yeah.
you go to the store and buy, batteries. Go buy, AA batteries. They'll only last for 10 years before they completely drain.
Yeah,
Coal, you don't have that problem.
I have. We are talking about electricity, and I have. We need
Hmm.
United States, I suppose,
This was a
75.
great article. I read this.
Yeah,
Yes,
1,000 miles to have.
not
It's
possible.
impressive. Yeah, not possible. Another one here is very interesting. A minute. We
Yep.
need wind farms spanning in area that equal Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky. So it's combined. So impossible to reach this. So the numbers are totally fictional.
Correct.
Yeah. Uh, but the most important phrase you mentioned today for me going to the conclusions, was the following. You said that wind and solar are not renewables because
Correct.
at each 15 years, we need to replace all systems, equipment, and we do not have where to put these materials, used materials.
And where are the minerals going to come for building out all these new solar panels and new wind turbines and all the energy that you need hydrocarbons, or basically oil and gas and coal, to manufacture all of these solar power panels and to manufacture these wind turbines and transport them to sites. And even wind turbines, these large wind turbines, some of them need 700 gallons of oil just to keep them lubricated. There's no getting around. The world will continue to need oil and gas and coal and LNG and nuclear for the foreseeable future because wind and solar cannot replace them. And wind and solar need to be replaced every 10 to 15 years, completely taken down and dismantled, and then brand new sets all put up. They're not taking this into account. And all of these new installations of wind and solar, most of them do not have the budget for decommissioning and rebuilding these built into the contract. They're not taking that into account. Normally in oil and gas world, when you build an offshore oil platform, you have to come up with the money for decommissioning at the end of life. That's
Yeah,
part of the contract. Governments
but
demand that.
but it's
That is
longer. But
not it for wind and solar.
yeah, but it's longer than renewables. Renewables are
Yes.
the times 10 to 15 years, and
Well, they
oil and
they
gas is
claim
30
20
years.
to 30 years, but it's not true.
Yeah,
In one good hailstorm, I'll knock out an entire
yeah, yeah.
solar farm, which, as you can see, happening in
This
Texas and a few other places.
this concept is the most important thing you said today. And my suggestion that you write something about this because it's so important. This thought
Yeah.
about the
Okay. Yeah.
renewables.
I'm locked out of LinkedIn on my phone right now because I'm overseas. It's a long story, but I've still got my laptop, so I can write a little bit.
Yeah,
But I'm going to be quiet, a lot quieter on LinkedIn for the next couple of weeks while I'm overseas, just because the two-step verification. A long story. Anyway, yeah, I'll write it up. So renewable energy is not renewable. It is a marketing phrase, just like fossil fuels are not actually made from fossils. I view both as energy, and we're not going to run out of oil and gas and coal. We're not going to run out of nuclear, and wind and solar are not renewable, and they are not green. They have to be constantly, every couple of decades, rebuilt out, completely torn down and completely rebuilt up from scratch. That is not renewable, and it's
yeah,
not green.
that's a strong point. Really is. Tom, was a pleasure. I hope we can have more meetings, more podcasts.
Sure.
As soon as you go back to your home, you have
Yep.
a good system to